Hello and welcome to another tournament recap. We have another tournament, 15-minute with 5-second increment. Let's just jump into the first round. So my first round opponent is the second best rated player in the state of Utah. Just moved here from Arizona, and he starts off with D4. I'm fully expecting to lose this game, and so I go into my King's Indian defense. Is what I always do against D4. He goes into a London, and it's more of a Jabava London setup. And I just continue doing what I do for the King's Indian. He goes E4, I go D6 here to prevent any of this. I don't want that. So he gets the queen, looking to skewer this diagonal and trade off the bishop. I'm gonna castle anyways, just because it's not the best thing to deal with. He castles long, and this is gonna be a very aggressive style game from white. So I go knight to B to D7 just to make sure that we, have the structure for the King's Indian defense. And he goes to trade off that bishop. So what I do here is I push E5. I don't want it to necessarily take and get the queen down here. It's not going to be fun for me. So I'm pushing E5 to clash in the center, and he closes the position. So what I do in this position is I go knight to H4, trying to get to this F4 square, which is very common in the King's Indian defense. He goes G4 to kick my knight out, and I push through anyways, losing the pawn in the process. I'm fine with this. It gets the bishop off that diagonal, and I feel like I have a little bit more breathing room. So I get the queen over here to H4, and we're fighting around equality according to the evaluation bar. So I feel very strong about my prospects so far. He goes over here to G3 saying, let's trade off. I want to open up this file and get this rook into the game. Now, I'm not gonna lie, at this point of the game, for some reason I don't remember, I don't know why, but this knight I thought was not in this current spot. So I thought the bishop was x-raying this, and I'm doing all this calculation for this amount of time, and I said, great, I'm just gonna take the pawn. He can't take back anyways because the bishop's there. Obviously it's not, and so he takes my queen. We keep playing on, but at this point, we'll just believe I resigned. We played for a long time, and I try to be as resourceful as possible. It took him a long time to find the winning combination, but eventually he found it. I lost to the second best player in Utah. I'm not too upset about it. It kind of sucks that I had a blunder, and that was pretty much the only major mistake I had throughout this whole tournament. So in my second game, I played a new opponent I've never played before, and as white, I go E4. He brings out the knight to C6, which I find weird. So I just develop my knight as normal, and he brings out this pawn over here to D5 in like a delayed Scandinavian attack. So I go in, and we go into the Scandinavian theory. He goes here to A5, and this is like a normal Scandinavian where you push up to D4. He brings that bishop up. You bring the bishop up here. You're looking to castle. He castles long, which I found very interesting. And we're looking at all this right here. He's looking to trade off and get this pawn, is what I'm thinking. So I push the pawn instead, saying, hey, if I'm going to lose it, I'm going to lose it. He takes here. Now, in this situation, this is a huge blunder for him because I can just take queen to D5 and you're obviously winning. So that was my bad. Instead, what I ended up doing, hello, Dom. What I ended up doing was I was so focused on not like losing the queen that I brought the bishop here and blocked it on D2. He brings the rook back. I castle. Now I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage. He brings the pawn over here to E5 to try to attack. I bring this knight over here, opening this bishop up to attack the queen. He brings the queen out here, now eyeing these two pawns. And I bring the queen over here to C1 to one, get out of the pin of the rook, but also to protect this B2 pawn. He takes, I take with the bishop. He's slightly converting his advantage. He brings the knight over here to attack this bishop. I'm thinking, great, I can get this nice bishop skewer on the rook, forgetting that he can double up the pawn and fork my two pieces. So at this point, now I'm really losing. I take the pawn, we trade off the knight, and I get the bishop out of there. I'm looking to get more my pieces developed and into the game. He goes to trade off this bishop. I trade off the bishop. He gets the queen there, and I bring the rook there. He wants to trade off the knight, and I say, nah, I don't really want to trade it off right now, and give you more of a center control. He brings the queen back here to E7. He's enjoying a very comfortable lead, but this is where things start to go south for him. So I bring the queen over here, pinning this knight to the queen. He brings this knight here to double attack on this, and I go ahead and just take the knight, putting the king in check, and the rook takes. Now, in this position, what he should have done is he should have taken with the C7 pawn, but instead, now that he's taken with the rook, I take here, and now I am threatening this queen. I'm threatening this pawn. I'm sort of back in this game. He can still save himself if he was to go to queen to D7 here, but he brings the rook over to trade off the rooks. And this is a big move because I find the best move in the game, which is queen to f5, now pinning the rook to the king. He brings the knight to unpin it. And that is also not the best move because I bring the queen there to pin the knight, and we trade off the queens, and I'm now up. I'm up considerably, and I have my rooks in the game. I'm getting him on the 7th rank. He pushes his pawns, but it's not really affecting me on the king side. They have a long ways to go. So what I do here is I push to b4 to move this knight out from defending the square because I want to get that rook there, and I want to start attacking that queen. So he brings the knight over here to a6 to, I thought was a terrible move, probably one of the worst moves he could do. I bring the rook here, and now I'm targeting this, so he can't move this knight to go after these pawns. He's trying to bring this rook in, trying to tear apart my king side, and I push to the knight. He can't move it because I'm going to start putting the king in check, and he moves the king instead, and at this point, it's over. He resigns. I win my second game of the day. So I didn't capitalize on the early blunder that he made. He kind of capitalized on the blunder I made, but I really capitalized on the blunder he made to win that rook early on in the game. So in my third game of the tournament, I'm playing against this guy that is rated 872 over the board, but on chess.com, he's around a 1600 rated player. I knew that talking to him before the tournament, and so I didn't take this very lightly. I will go e4, go into the Italian, and he goes into the 2 knights defense, which I wanted to go into the fried liver, but then he goes into a Traxler offer. I don't know my Traxler theory very well. We talked about it during the game. I was like, oh, we're gonna go into the Traxler. He's like, yep. He's like, I know my theory pretty well, but do you? And I was like, I don't. So I decline the Traxler. I go ahead and I say no to that. He just castles, and I develop my knight, and we're just kind of developing slowly. I bring my knight back. He's now up, has a slight advantage because I wasted a move going to g5 and back. He goes to pin my queen, and I make the dubious move of e2. It's an inaccuracy. It's not a huge deal because he takes and I open up my king side, but there's nowhere that the queen can he can't really take advantage of it right away. So I bring my king over to h2 to protect this pawn and not make sure that this queen doesn't get in. He comes in trying to reroute the knights, but this pawn is easily covering these squares. You can really only come here, and even then, it's going to take him a long time to get this knight back in the game. I start bringing my pieces over to the king side, and he goes to attack my bishop. I just bring it back. I want my bishop on this diagonal because I think it's very strong looking at the king like this. He brings this knight back, trying to get it over here to g5 and try to get this queen involved. And I go f6 to try to open up this. If he takes, I bring the bishop in, and I get more pieces into the action. He brings the bishop back, seeing this, not wanting this to happen. And so I close off that bishop completely, and I kind of stop his attack in its tracks. He tries to open it up. Now I have the queen looking here, and that bishop's kind of stuck here. So he's trying to bring this knight over, trying to get it here and attack this bishop. And I bring this queen over here. I thought pretty standard looking at this. He doesn't see that though, brings the bishop back, and I take the h6 pawn, and now I'm really attacking the queen. The evaluation bar swung highly in my direction. Things are looking great. Now he goes to defends mate, obviously, and I just bring another attacker into the game. He goes to kind of fork these two pieces, trying to get this rook involved and get this queen in. But he's forgetting now that this bishop that I placed here on this diagonal is now pinning this pawn, and I can get this queen in. He brings the king there. I go here, fully expecting him to take, and I can get the mate. But he just brings the king back, and like an idiot, I miss mate like this, right? That's mate. Completely missed it. And instead, I take here with check, thinking that, oh, you can't go here, and missing the knight move here. Now, even here, it's mate. But I still miss that. And I take with the queen, thinking, oh, I'll just swing over here and go here. He brings the knight over there. I bring the queen here, and he then throws a check just in the nick of time. It's still mate in 2. I go king to g2, making this a little bit harder. And then I take this knight here, and he takes the bishop, and it's ruining my chances. I want to get my rook over here and get the checkmate, but I can't. My king's in the way. So he brings the rook over. He gets the king in. At this point, I'm really thinking that I have lost my chance of checkmating this guy. So I keep going here. I bring him back over here, and I get the rook here. I'm going to win the king. He finally resigns with just a little bit of time left on each of our clocks, and I win my third game of the evening. So we come into the last game of the evening. I'm black, and I'm playing against this older man that has kicked my butt in the past. He's around a 1650 rated player, and he's very strong. So I was fully expecting to lose this game, finish 2-2. be happy. But I'm just saying, let's just play our best game. He goes d4. I bring knight f6, thinking we're going to go into King's Indian, and he goes with a Queen's Gambit, which, if you played me at all, I love to play the Budapest Gambit against this, just because people don't see it very often. But it's something it's easy to refute if you're white. And he does all the main line refutations. He has a slight advantage now going into the opening. I bring my knight here. He brings his queen. Very standard stuff. And I bring out the check here, which is like not the best because you can bring this bishop here. You can bring this knight here, kind of stop it and it distracts. The best move in this case is instead of doing the bishop check, bring the queen in, cover this, and you're getting your queen into the game. And then they want to push b2 and they want to castle. We don't do that. What we do is we go here instead and we trade off the bishops and he develops his knight. So I'm helping him out a little bit. He still has a slight advantage into the opening. So then I finally figure out queen to e7. He brings the bishop over here to e2, looking to castle. And I say, hey, let's trade off the knights. But he decides to castle instead. And I just trade the knight there. So he brings his knight into the game. I'm not really getting the advantage I want usually out of the Budapest. I castle and he pushes here to a3. Now in this position, what I want to do is this bishop is not really going to do much on this diagonal. I think it's going to have a much better future on this diagonal. So I start working on getting that bishop into the game. He brings this in and that kind of binds this bishop to the square. Not the best. So I bring this rook here to add an extra defender and he starts to push on this knight and I get my bishop in the game. He sees that pin and he wants to get out. I push here, completely forgetting that this is here. But because the queen's no longer here, it's okay that if I don't miss that, I'm not completely screwed. So I can bring my knight over here to b8. Now he's trying to get his rooks into the game. He's trying to get over here to a1. I say, hey, I'm going to release this tension and I'm going to open the square to also get my knight back in the game, which he does. He brings the rooks in. I get the knight in. I'm looking to get this knight over here on c5, which is all I really want. He brings the bishop in, threatening an attack over here on h8. I bring the knight over. He brings the knight in and I shut it down. He goes over here to f4. I'm thinking just to swing around here and look to attack again. And I bring the rook over here. We are in a completely dead even position. He gets the knight here. And this is like a mistake on his part. The reason being, it's a very hard move to find, but going king to g7 here, because at this point you bring the knight in and I can fork. So I'm up a little bit, but it's just like I don't really see that in the game. So what happens instead is I go knight to d7, trying to bring that knight back in. He's looking to bring this bishop back. I bring the rooks into the game and he's going here looking to get this bishop in, open this up and cause problems for me. However, because this bishop isn't here anymore, this is a free knight technically. And this is where he blunders because I take the free knight here. You can't take back because obviously I'm going to win the pieces back and I get to keep my bishop. And now he's lost in a big attacker in his attack on my king. Now he pushes over here to e4 because I have this nice little attack on here and he doesn't want to trade off the queens because I'd be taking the pawn with check. So now that he's moved here, I can now lock up the square he has in his bishop and essentially take his bishop out of the game, which is what I do. He brings this queen to h6, which I'm not too scared about because I just go ahead and I can bring my queen back here. I've also brought it, centralized it, brought it back into the fight. He brings the king there. And I'm now bringing my rooks over. I'm looking to go here. This knight is now serving a great purpose of keeping this bishop out of the game. The rooks really can't even get in because this bishop is here. I'm in a very pretty position. He's bringing the rooks over, trying to do something. I bring this in and he brings h3. I'm trying to figure out how am I gonna be like break into this. And my idea is to bring the rooks in and he can't bring this in because I can break in like this way. So I bring my rook here, looking to attack. He still has no way of busting in on this level, so I'm feeling very confident. He finally is trying to get his bishop back in the game, but I find the best move in this position, which is mate in 11, by the way, of rook takes h3, the pawn takes here, and you can take it with the queen. He goes queen to h2, and it is mate in 4 at this point. I go h5. However, I'm in time trouble. I have about 15 seconds off the board. I don't find that. I stop taking the notation at this point. We grind this down to an end game and I win by 1 move. So I got very lucky. I won this game. I'm very happy with how I finished this tournament at 3-1. And I finished the tournament with my new rating of 1296 in the quick section of the US Chess Federation. Well, if you like that video, please like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave some comments on how I messed up some of these games and how I can be better. And if you want to see any future chess tournament recaps, you can view this here. I'll see you next time.